Hello and welcome to Top of the Morning. I'm your host, Simon Harrington. Today we'd like to welcome Congresswoman Donna Edwards, who represents Maryland's 4th District, which includes the areas of Prince George's County and parts of Montgomery County. Congresswoman Edwards defeated incumbent Albert Wynn in the Democratic primaries of 2008, after which Wynn tendered his resignation. Edwards then won a special election to finish the term of Wynn, and then in November of the same year, Edwards ran for the full-term seat against Republican candidate Peter James. Edwards won with overwhelming support, taking 85% of the vote, and Edwards was then the first African-American woman to represent Maryland in the United States Congress. Don't go away, we'll be right back with our guest.
USS Constellation. There's a grand lady in Baltimore who has taken her rightful place as the Inner Harbor's crown jewel in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay. Launched in 1854 as the last all-sail ship designed and built for the United States Navy, Constellation's century of service embraced the ages of sail, steam, gas, diesel, and nuclear power. Imagine that, launched in 1854 and still afloat. Even more exciting, visitors can come aboard Constellation and explore to their heart's content. On board Constellation, history comes alive as visitors touch, feel, and experience what life was like for sailors during the Civil War. Just bring your imagination.
Welcome to another edition of Top of the Morning. We're joined here by Congresswoman Donna Edwards. Congresswoman Edwards, tell us about your childhood and growing up in, I believe, North Carolina.
Well, actually, I was born in North Carolina, but I never really lived there except going to college. I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force for almost 30 years. I lived all over the place, including here in our great state of Maryland, but I went to almost 14 schools, I think, when I was growing up. So every region of the country, you know, so many different states. I think by the time I'd gone to college, I had actually spent the night in every single state of the Union. But went to Wake Forest University in North Carolina for my undergraduate studies.
And what were some of the things in your early childhood that you remember and look fondly back on and that might have led to where you are today as a Congresswoman?
Well, I always think that one of the reasons that I'm in public service is because of the lessons that I learned both from my mom and my dad particularly with his military service. And you learn a lot about what it means to make a commitment and to set goals, and so I like to think I learned those things. But I was mentioning to a group of our uniformed service members at another time that one of the things I learned when you travel around to so many different places and you meet so many different people is that mostly people are just alike.
Sure,
and have a lot in common in every single region of the country and also internationally. And I learned to really appreciate that, and so not so much focused on differences, but really focusing on the things that make us the same.
Okay, and tell me, so you went to Wake Forest, right? And
I did. I went to Wake Forest University, which was a great experience for me. I mean, it was really the first time I'd lived away from home, like a lot of young people do, and so I had to sow my oats a little bit. And I came out of Wake Forest, which is a wonderful institution.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Great liberal arts school. I studied English and Spanish. I had an opportunity to go to the University of Salamanca in Spain, where I learned a little bit about European architecture. And then I came out and did some other things, and then later went to law school at the University of New Hampshire in Concord, New Hampshire, which was a great place to spend a winter, but I don't like those kind of winters, so I came back home.
Sure, of course, back to Maryland.
That's right.
Okay, and then you took a job, I believe, with Congressman Albert Wynn, is that correct?
I did. Well, what I did was I actually clerked, when I was in law school, I clerked in his legal office, not working for him as a member. He wasn't a member of Congress then, and he was in the state legislature, but I actually worked in his legal office because I thought when I was in law school that I wanted to go into private practice, and so that was a great opportunity to learn what it would mean to be in private practice. I later came out of law school, clerked for a judge on the District of Columbia Superior Court, and then decided I wanted to really be in the nonprofit sector. And so I spent the better part of my career after that running nonprofit organizations, starting nonprofit organizations, including one called the National Network to End Domestic Violence, which is a group that I started, along with some other women around the country, and it is today the largest anti-domestic violence group in the country.
Okay, and then what was it? Was it along those lines is what made you decide to get involved in politics? Was the domestic violence because of what you had seen and you wanted to make a change, or?
Well, I was always very interested in public policy. I grew up in a family where we sat around our dinner table every night, and we didn't get to watch television during dinner. We had to talk to each other.
Sure, right.
Part of the requirement is that we had to talk about what was going on around the world and in our community and in politics. And so I always had a great appreciation from my parents for politics. I volunteered on my first campaign when I was in high school. We lived out in New Mexico in Albuquerque, and so I volunteered on a gubernatorial campaign out there, and I kind of got the bug. But I was always involved in my community as well, and I think that's an important thing for young people to know. You don't just kind of jump into politics, but you actually do something in your community and public policy so that you have something to bring to the table. And it wasn't until my son was ready to graduate high school and I saw some things that I didn't like and tried to get other people to run for Congress, and nobody would do it because it was challenging a long-time incumbent. And so I drove to Annapolis, filled out the form, wrote my check for $100, and became a candidate for Congress.
All right, can I ask you what one of those things or a couple of those things might have been that you didn't like, that you were seeing going on, that really spearheaded you to do it yourself, to go?
Sure. Well, this was right at the time, just after I decided to run for Congress because the member of Congress I replaced, Albert Wen, had been a strong supporter of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
And I didn't think that really reflected our district. And there were some other things around environmental policy and financial services policy, and I thought it was time for us to have a conversation in our congressional district about what we wanted for representation. And so I set about the task of going around and meeting and greeting people all through our congressional district, having conversations with them at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the metro stations, about what it would mean to make a change and the difference that I could make. And I'm a fairly astute student of public policy because of some work that I did in the nonprofit sector. I focused on, before coming to Congress, on things like Social Security and Medicare, on all kinds of domestic and international policy. And so I made the case to the voters, and at first they decided no. So I lost the first election that I ran in 2006.
Right.
And that was a great eye-opener for me because it was a very closely contested election. But, one of the things that I've learned is that, especially with a lot of women who run for political office, if they lose the first time, they never run again. And I knew that.
That's probably happens a lot, though, right, with everybody that runs.
But men decide that differently.
Okay.
And a lot of men will lose and go, well, I could have done that, and so then they do it again. But not so for women. And that's been really well documented by a lot of folks who do research on these issues. And I knew that because I, worked on a number of these electoral issues before. And I decided, I'm going to run again. And I did. And then in 2008, I managed to convince enough voters. And now I've been reelected 3 times.
Okay. Well done. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back with our guest, Congresswoman Donna Edwards.
Hi. Thank you. It's good to be with you today. I have never been on a ship before, so it's an exciting day. Thank you.
Hi, very nice to meet you.
Ben Curtis.
Hi, how are you? Very good, thanks. Wanna come aboard and take a look around?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's see, why don't we take a walk back to the stern first while we're here. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I just like to bring everybody back this way first because this is sort of where you can really see the whole sweep of the deck, and it's kind of a nice place to sort of start a little bit about the ship's history. She was built in 1854. She's the second of 3 ships to be called Constellation. The first one was built here in Baltimore in 1797, right down in the Canton area, and there are 8 pieces of the original ship in this ship. We don't know where they are.
Wow. Okay.
But according to a newspaper report on the day of this ship's launch, they're in there. So that's good enough. You know, it basically
well, we don't
continues.
do ship building anymore.
We do ship repair. Yep. But not a lot of ship building per se. We're certainly equipped out at Sparrows Point if we ever had to. But the infrastructure is actually still there. But when this ship was launched, it was basically she was launched in 1854, and she was basically that she is the last all-sail ship built for the U.S. Navy. She carried a crew of about 325, which consisted of the captain, basically 10 officers, 5 line, 5 staff, a number of lower-ranked officers, a company of Marines on board, probably about 40 Marines who were basically the police force on board. All the rest sailors, 20 or so of which would have been ship's boys. So they were ages basically 13 to 17, youngsters on board, and for whom the ship was their home, their school, and their place of work. And we sort of, I like to think that we sort of continue that the ship was never in any battles or anything like that, but she's always been sort of a platform for training and education. And
how long was she in commission?
She was in commission for 100 years. So a pretty long time,
Yeah.
Basically 1855 to 1955 when she was finally decommissioned and brought here to Baltimore in a floating dry dock. But just like when she was an active ship, she was either trained, either she had the ship's boys, who were known as powder monkeys on board, because one of their main jobs if the ship was in action was to bring the powder charge to their respective gun crew. So they were each ship's boy was assigned to one of the ship's guns. Later on in her career, she became a training ship at the Naval Academy. So she was there from 1879 to 1893. She was at the Naval Academy. Then she was in Newport, Rhode Island, where she was a stationary training ship. So always training, always educating. And now, of course, we have visitors on board. They learn about her history. Yep. And then we also do a ton of education programming on board for school groups and scout groups. Just about every weekend. Not necessarily right now when it's this cold, but we do get some winter campers on board. But we have a group of anywhere from 20 to 60 kids on board overnight. It's really fun. We do that here on Constellation and on the submarine.
I could bring you a group of members of Congress.
Okay.
Welcome back to Top of the Morning again. We're joined by our guest, Congresswoman Donna Edwards. All right, so now you've been elected to Congress in 2008, replacing Albert Wynn, and then you won the full election that same year, I believe, in November, correct?
That's right. In fact, in that year, I won 4 elections.
Oh, yes?
Primary election, a general election, a special primary election, and a special general election.
Of course, good. Congratulations.
So that really hardens you.
Yeah. So now, then the first step going to Congress, you have to go that first day. What was that like? Tell us about that. And were you intimidated, or?
No, I mean, I've lived in and around Washington in the suburbs in Maryland for many years, and so I wasn't intimidated, but I was excited. The day that I was sworn in, I will never forget that day, because usually in a special election when you're sworn in, a few people show up because it's quick and it happens very quickly, but with mine, because I live near Washington, hundreds of people filled the gallery, and some of my colleagues now tell me that they've never seen anything like that in the Congress before. And so when I took that oath of office and took it from Nancy Pelosi, a Marylander who I really admire, it was a pretty exciting day. But I really hit the ground running. I serve on our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and our Science and Technology Committee, and both of those committees have a really, sort of great importance for the state of Maryland and for my congressional district. Obviously, with transportation, any of us who live either in the Baltimore region or in the Washington, D.C. region experience traffic multiple fold. So that's
help us.
That's right. So that's really important. But also science and technology. One of my big challenges is around space policy.
Yes.
I am the ranking Democrat today on our committee that oversees NASA. Space is an incredibly important business for Maryland. 17 of the top 25 aerospace companies are headquartered in Maryland.
Okay, yeah.
And we are home to the Goddard Space Flight Center, the Space Institute here in Baltimore, a lot of interest. And so I serve on that committee working on our space policy, working on policy related to our weather centers and weather policy. And so it's both a challenge for me intellectually, because it's stuff that I didn't know before and I get to learn, but really fun. And of course with space, I spent some time at Goddard Space Flight Center as a systems engineer.
Oh, no, that's fascinating.
So it's been coming full circle as a member of Congress to pay attention to that.
Well, then you're also a big supporter of STEM. I believe I read that you like the STEM system.
I do. I mean, for me, getting students to focus on science, technology, engineering, and math are the ways that we conquer the 21st century. We're going to have a different kind of economy, even a different manufacturing economy that's going to be about advanced technologies and all of those STEM fields. So we've got to get more young people engaged in those fields.
Yeah, and why do you think there has been such a lack of the student body in our nation currently learning these types of math and science, and where do you think the shortfalls come?
Well, I think in part, in our K-12 education system, it's really important for us to capture students early and in a way that excites them. Yeah. And so a lot of that hands-on learning that young people have is very important, so they get to experience, we're sitting here on a constellation, which is really terrific. Well, if a student gets to do sort of hands-on learning and figure out, kind of what's going on, then they are more likely to then engage in the technology fields that, could see them making it a career. And so in my office, we pay a lot of attention to STEM learning. I've been doing a tour of our historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions, looking at ways that we can improve not just the education, but education delivery. How do we teach students? What do we tell them about the opportunities that are available for them?
So you mentioned Nancy Pelosi, and you were at the Seneca Falls for the National Women's Hall of Fame. When you met Nancy, or not met her, but were there with her for her receiving an award?
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi is such a mentor for so many of us, and I think for women, political leaders, for me as a member of Congress, and she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. She is, after all, the first woman Speaker of the House of Representatives, and on top of that, she's a great Marylander. I like saying that. I know that people in San Francisco claim her, but we claim her here in Baltimore, we claim her here in Maryland, and she's such a tremendous leader and has been a real example for women, and it was an opportunity in that induction for us to celebrate her as a woman leader, but also to look to our future, because I know that that's what she speaks to. How is it that we can continue to grow women as leaders, as political leaders, as members of Congress, and eventually President of the United States?
Oh, okay. Well, I think we have a clip of that, Nancy Pelosi, and you were at the Seneca Falls.
Chairs of committees and women chairs, and they will be again. Of Minnesota, Betty. Wayne Moore, where's Wayne Moore? He's coming. The author of the Violence Against Women Act. The Violence Against Women Act in the 90s. Louise Clark. She was the first to remember.
It's really wonderful to be here in Seneca Falls, hearing such great history for all of us as women, but especially to be here with our leader, our former Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, being inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame. I mean, it really gives me goosebumps to think about the fact that I also stand on her shoulders.
It's so inspiring to be among all of these incredible inductees. Where do you want to go from this experience that you're having here at Seneca Falls? How is this going to inspire you?
Well, one of the things I'm really excited about is that Leader Pelosi has actually put us on a path as Democratic women in the Congress to really focus on a women's economic agenda, building the economic health and strength of women, whether it is making sure that we have affordable and accessible child care, which means so much to us, making sure that we can start businesses. Women are the fastest growing entrepreneurs in this country, and so we can build on that kind of economic success. Leader Pelosi is leading the way, and that, to me, is about an economic agenda, because when women succeed, America succeeds.
Absolutely.
You know, what I really want to say is I think about Leader Pelosi. I came into Congress in 2008. I'm the only woman member of the House. Senator Mikulski is our woman in the Senate. But to be able to serve under then Speaker and now Leader is so tremendous for me as a woman and somebody who's new to politics. I've learned so much. I watch her. She influences me. She inspires me. And I think to serve with a woman Speaker of the House, wow, something to tell the grandkids.
Pretty tremendous opportunity. Thank you so much, and I'm just thrilled to have you visit with us up here.
Thank you.
Coming back from the clip, still with Congresswoman Donna Edwards. Tell me, what are some of your favorite pieces of legislature that have been passed in the last few years whilst you've been out there that you think really are going to be productive pieces?
Well, I have to say, the very first piece of legislation that I was instrumental in passing was adding Maryland to the list of states where students who receive free and reduced lunch, those are some of our poorest students, also have the ability to receive supper. And so that was my sort of signature thing when I first came into the Congress, and I'll never forget that because we have so many students here in our state who are in need, and to know that in addition to breakfast and lunch, we're making sure that they have the supper as well is very important.
All right, I'm going to a break and then we'll be right back.
Into the 1860s, and you are back in time on the Constellation learning what it was like to be here.
People come on board and they get touched by this walking through history that they're able to do, and they're able to see the hammocks and see the officer's wardroom and sit in the captain's cabin and have this whole immersive experience that you never are going to get at most types of museums. So this is a really wonderful experience for them, and they have no idea what they're missing out on, and then they come on board and they keep coming back.
We fire the cannon, turn the capstan, and ring the bell daily. And we recommend the free self-guided audio tour, which comes in 2 flavors. One perfect for children, the other for adults. Plus, there's the ever-popular Powder Monkey Tour for kids and hands-on adult tours like A Ship as a Machine and Black Sailors in Navy Blue. Groups can also come aboard and sling their hammocks in our overnight program or host special events. Our crew knows the USS Constellation is an amazing experience, but don't just take our word for it. Here's what recent visitors had to say.
It's very kid-friendly, very family-oriented, and the kids will love it, and they'll come out asking questions, which I love.
It transports you back. You can almost get the feel that you were actually there, because laying in that hammock, like, oh my goodness.
I think it's really interesting because it shows you exactly how they slept and how they ate and how they went through life.
But it was excellent tour, and I think it's something they need to maintain for generations to come.
Should be kind of a must for people who are in the area and have an hour or 2 to spend.
I think it makes me appreciate being an American, knowing these people went through these things to put me where I am now.
I'd say come see it.
Yeah, we were a little bit leery because of the age of our children, 4 and 7. But they enjoyed it so much. It really kind of surprised us. We thought it'd be more for us, the parents, but no, they loved it.
They had a good time.
Yeah, they had a great time.
So come aboard USS Constellation. And while you're here in Baltimore, be sure to visit these other attractions of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.
Welcome back to Top of the Morning, again joined by Congresswoman Donna Edwards. Any last thoughts, Congresswoman?
Well, I can only think, one, how proud I am to be from Maryland. I think you asked me before about our signature legislation. Well, we can't leave out the Affordable Care Act, bringing health care to millions of Americans and thousands of Marylanders, and then add on top of that what we're going to do both in Maryland and in this country to raise wages, raising the minimum wage, which is very important, really important. to me and to people who live here in our state. And I think how lucky I am to be able to work in the Congress and work on behalf of the people of the 4th Congressional District of Maryland, but really work on behalf of all of Marylanders.
All right, and today you were at the USS Constellation, parked here or docked here in Baltimore Harbor. What did you think of the tour? What did you think of the boat, the ship?
Well, the ship is wonderful, and it's great history, and I learned a lot, but I also learned that I have to come back and do the nickel tour all on my own, so that I can read about all the stories of those who served on the Constellation and all of its history. But it's really beautiful, and I think if people have an opportunity to visit, then they should.
Well, as we wrap up this half-hour show, is there anything that you would like to mention, anything you would like our viewers to know about?
Well, thanks so much for asking, because I have a STEM forum that's coming up. We talked about STEM earlier, and what we do is bring together educators and students and people in the private sector so that we can get more of our young people engaged in the science, technology, and engineering and math fields.
Excellent. And so if people want to contact you, we will have that information on the screen. Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
All right.
Let's say 40. No, I'm sorry, probably more like 200 families, who we keep in touch with, and every year we have a crew and descendant reunion. So crew members, because across the collection, there's still people alive who sailed on Taney, and there's still people alive who sailed on submarine, and there was one, I think he's still around, a fellow who served on board here during World War II. A fellow named Murray Weingarten, who lived in Ellicott City, and
the last of them.
Not many around, and so that's really fun, And when those folks come around, and they're just so excited, a lot of them never been here before,
It's so interesting, because I met a family of it's a different story, but the guy who was a Surgeon General under Lincoln. And his descendants had apparently had this foot locker. They didn't even know they had it. And they found photographs, just unbelievable.
Treasure trove.
Yeah, and it was like a, great-great-great-great-granddaughter or something, and just happened to be cleaning things out and found this. Literally things just piled on top of each other in a locker, and and they turned it over to a couple of different museums to really begin the curation. But you've got to imagine that there are things like that just kind of all over the place, and when you stumble across it. You do.
There was something on Antiques Roadshow that was related to this a while back. Yeah, it was. I can't remember.
So same sort of thing, a descendant coming with something they had found.
Yeah. Wow. And actually, I think it was more related to the frigate Constellation, the ship built here in Baltimore. It was like a captain's. I don't know. It was some sort of I don't want to say a liquor cabinet, but something like that box. So that the captain would have had his midnight cordial in or something like that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's worth it.
Thanks very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed your tour.
Thank you, I did. I learned a lot just in this short
That you getting an opportunity to come on board, and anytime.
Oh, I'm coming back.
Good.
Thank you.
So welcome aboard USS Constellation and enjoy your visit to the historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.